welcome our top focus this hour. The Chief Justice of India, CJI Ramana, has called for inclusion of more women in Indian judiciary. Speaking at an event to celebrate the International Day of Women Judges, the Chief Justice of India pointed out that the government is sitting on appointment of 20 women judges as High Court judges. Now, CJI also proposed reservation for girls in legal education, pointing out that only 15% of the country's advocates are women. Chief Justice of India Ramana said that patriarchy is the reason behind underrepresentation of women in judiciary. For more on this, I'm joined by my colleague Meenakshi Bhanja on the broadcast. Meenakshi, thank you for joining us. You've covered judiciary for a very long time. And I want to understand from you about your experiences as a woman journalist who has covered judiciary for the Times Network. What have you observed as far as the representation of women is concerned in judiciary and your experiences?
Well, yes, Archana, you see, largely we are based in New Delhi, which is the capital of India. This has the Supreme Court, the Delhi High Court, and also a fair number of trial courts. But despite that, there are multifarious problems. Women journalists or women in particular also sometimes encounter. For instance, since we are taking up the Honorable Chief Justice of India and his mentions or his bemoaning or lamentations pertaining to the lack of infrastructure and other circumstances which contribute to women being still underrepresented as far as judiciary is concerned, it translates down below as well, whether it is the journalist or a common citizen who's a litigant in any of these courts. They have to encounter a fair number of problems simply because they do not find a lot of like-minded people they can connect with, whether it is infrastructure of usage of a toilet, for instance, Archana. In a place like Delhi, it is still much better as compared to other parts of India. We have covered for the Times Group from various parts of this country, from Uttarakhand High Court to courts in Uttar Pradesh, and there I can affirm for our viewers that this lack of infrastructure is very much in your face as compared to still some courts in Delhi. That is where the problem comes in, and it is specifically what the Honorable Chief Justice of India was referring to. He was obviously talking about the underrepresentation in judiciary as far as female candidates go, but he was talking about the circumstantial factors as well, which contributed to this underrepresentation or the hesitancy a lot of women encounter to venture into this domain. So for an ordinary litigant, a journalist like myself, if I step outside to some court in any other part of the country, Archana, there are multifarious problems, from usage of proper clean toilet to other accessories to other access to information, or that is something we need to really think about and introspect, and that is what we have seen the Honorable Chief Justice of India mention several times in the presence of incumbent law ministers as well, to increase infrastructure spend on judiciary. So there are multifarious problems. I'll also recount for our viewers one instance in Patiala House where the journalists got rounded up by a lot of hooligans who were dressed up as lawyers.
All right, it's unfortunate that we've lost that link with Meenakshi. She was telling us something very important and something very personal about her experiences, but we shall get in touch with her in case we get the link back. I'm joined by two very special guests on the broadcast, Geeta Luthra, who's a senior advocate, and Rekha Agarwal, who's also a very senior advocate. Ladies, thank you for making time and speaking to Mirror Now. This evening, let's start this very important conversation. However, this has been a very consistent conversation that has been happening for decades. But when the Chief Justice of India points it out, it becomes all the more pertinent to talk about it again and again and again. So I welcome you on the broadcast, and I would like to start with Geeta ji, you first. Instead of getting into the academic aspect of it, let's start with personal experiences. Let's talk about patriarchy, and a very important point that the Honorable Chief Justice of India made, that women in judiciary are often silenced in the courtrooms. For the benefit of our viewers, could you tell us more about it?
So I think it's really improving and it's really changing. So when I must have joined the profession, there were hardly any women. And the Delhi High Court was very hesitant in taking any of us as senior advocates, even though I thought we had all the credentials. I was qualified from Cambridge. I was an INLAC scholar. We had had a blazing career in the sense that one had topped all our institutions. I'd been government standing counsel, I'd been union counsel, I'd been Delhi government counsel. So this, if you wanted me to start off where Meenakshi left off, which was a personal experience. Now, things have changed. When we made the first woman senior in the Delhi High Court, it was a lady who was in her 70s, and she was well past prime age when she would have wanted to be seniors. Today's youngsters are seniors at 43, 45, younger ages. And the Delhi High Court was not making women seniors. Things have changed. In the last 4 to 5 years, I can see that there is a sea change. And I can see there is a sea change in making seniors. There is a sea change in making High Court judges. When you look at the competitive judiciary today, as many women are entering the national law schools, which are some 40 odd in number all over the country. And those are the most competitive law schools, including some very private good institutions. Now, women have started doing well. They're getting admission. They are topping. When we are judging moot courts or even organizing moot courts, we see, like our family helps in getting the KK Luthra moot court organized. You see some of the women lawyers are the ones that are the most brilliant, the most outstanding. I think there is no question that women are as good, better, more outstanding. But the question then is what we have to make sure that they get opportunity and environment. Now, opportunity is not that easy to come by in the high courts and Supreme Court. We have had only 8 Supreme Court judges, 4 of them currently. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine how slow there's been a growth in the number of Supreme Court judges and growth in appointment directly to the Supreme Court. So we want that to increase in numbers. And I really welcome what the Chief Justice has said. Chief Justice is marking it out, and he has actually not only spoken, he has acted, because it is in his tenure that these 3 women Supreme Court judges have come. And therefore, he is actually implementing what he's saying.
Okay.
And I can only welcome that.
All right, that's a very significant point you made, ma'am. Rekha Agarwal is also joining us on the broadcast. Ms. Agarwal, the Chief Justice of India said that women often have to face hostile atmosphere within the courtrooms. Harassment, lack of respect from the members of the bar and bench, the silencing of their opinions are some of the other traumatic experiences. What has your experience been like, or have you encountered certain experiences where, due to misrepresentation or lack of representation of women in judiciary, the delivery of justice has also been affected?
Absolutely. I fully agree with what the Honorable CJI has said about the problems that are being faced by lady advocates in the judicial system. And I myself, though I'm junior to Geeta, she's my senior both in the profession as well as my senior from school, that, we have, when I joined the profession, hello?
Yes,
when I joined the profession way back in 1987, I did face a lot of hostile, atmosphere myself. Perhaps one of the reasons could be that, there is a very patriarchal mindset where the legal profession is concerned. It was initially supposed to be a very male-dominated profession. And most of the women lawyers, who came in this career were either having their fathers as lawyers or their husbands as lawyers or brothers as lawyers. There were very few independent girls who had the guts to come into the profession on their own steam. So since it was, there was a certain taboo also attached to the to this profession, that that girls who come into the legal profession are more cantankerous, jhagdalu ladkiyan ban jati hai, they're going to be fighting at home. So many parents also, I would say that the mindset and that taboo which was there is there in the legal profession, that comes even before the girls become lawyers, because very few parents would encourage their daughters to become lawyers. And first problem was that. The first problem that would come is that if you become a lawyer, who's going to marry you? Because the image that is attached to a lawyer is that of a very, a very negative person who's always fighting. I mean, litigation is supposed to be as if you're supposed to, you're a negative-minded person. So first, parents would not encourage their daughters to become lawyers, or unless, as I said, the fathers, brothers, or husbands are lawyers. Then it carries on like a family tradition. It carries on from one generation to another. But if you're an independent woman, your parents think that nobody's going to marry you. That's the first important thing in India that has to be done. That marriage is very important. So, and later if you do have the guts to come into the profession, speaking from my own personal experience, one has faced all sorts of awkward questions. I mean, the moment one comes in the profession, especially when a junior, I think things have changed a lot nowadays, as Geeta ji said, that, now we have these wonderful law schools and we have the 5-year integrated, LLB course, where the acumen and the caliber of lady advocates is far more superior than our times. They've had much more advantages, at the beck and call, and they have come up. It's easier for them to come to the profession. But in my times, one of the funniest questions that was asked was that, are you married? Are you married? Now, if you're married, then what does your husband do? And if you're not married, then probably you were not taken seriously, because it was thought that after a couple of years, if the girl gets married, she's going to go away. Believe me. And this black coat that we are wearing, which is part of our uniform as prescribed under the Advocates Act. Way back in 1987, when I had joined, it was not compulsory for girls to even wear this black coat. They could go, they could do without wearing the coat, because that was one kind of an indulgence which was given to girls, as if girls could not handle the weight of a coat or the burden or the, wearing a coat all the time can become a little cumbersome, especially in the summers. So girls were given that kind of an indulgence. Acha, ladkiyan hai, okay, they need not wear a black coat. They can just wear a big collar. So that means that we were always treated in a separate manner. So, those kind of taboos were there in the beginning, but the kind of sexual harassment, if I may be very open and candid about it, sexual harassment at the workplace is rampant everywhere, whether it is the legal profession or the doctor's profession, the media, or, every profession, there is sexual harassment. So sexual harassment is rampant, whether it is from your male colleagues, or even if I may say that, thankfully, I've not been subject to that, but there have been various cases where girls have faced some kind of a sexual harassment, even from the judiciary. So those cases are also very open, and the media has strongly taken up those cases also.
You've raised a very important point. Yes, you've raised a very important point, and especially about marriage, because a very close friend of mine could not get married to a boy of her choice, because the in-law said कि लड़की बहुत तेज है क्योंकि वो lawyer है. This kind of narrative, this kind of language that's being used now. Taking a leaf out of this conversation, I want to come back to what the CJI said, and this is a very important thing. He said that a good number of women law graduates are compelled to give up their professional ambitions due to societal expectations. We need to create enabling environment for women to pursue their career in law. Now, Geeta Luthra, if in your personal experiences, what do you think is the role of a family and our ecosystem in order to encourage women in judiciary? It is a very, very important aspect, because I have seen, and you must have also seen, women taking career hits because of their family expectations and commitments.
So this is a very vexed question. The fact is that ultimate burden of looking after the family in a system like India falls on women. You need an infrastructure. We are very fortunate in India that we either have joint families or parents who are ready to pitch in and not say, look, we are grandparents, we are not going to help. So the fact is, you need all that. You need creches. You need, if you are a single working woman or a single mother, you still may need to work. You need to have that infrastructure. And I feel to a large extent, our courts have to get more organized. You have to have more judges. You have to have better timings. A lawyer should know, is my matter coming up at 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock or 10:30? We don't have that system. We don't have that calendar where lawyers go, fill in that my matter is going to be from 11 to 11:30 so that they know how to plan their day. So there are many infrastructural problems, starting with what you said. I wanted to come back to that. You know, colleague of mine started practice in Jharkhand. There were no toilets. So she would say that I had to go back by 1:30 every day because there were no toilets in the High Court. So the fact is, and we've had miserable toilets even now in some of the trial courts. It's just
What a shame.
the last 5-10 years that you are surviving. So forget infrastructure, forget creches, forget having committees of sexual harassment. You've had basics have not been there. The basic aspect that you need for a person to work with dignity was not provided. And you just had to be strong and bold and resilient and absolutely sure of yourself and your dignity so that people could not trample upon it. So all that has vastly improved. And I'm glad the Chief Justice is saying it, because if the Chief Justice leads the way, then all the Chief Justices of the various high courts will also start looking more and more at the talent. But I do want to say it should not be restricted only to the judiciary. It should be how you respect your women lawyers when they are in court. You shouldn't think that if they are being loud or assertive, they are being deemed to be aggressive or shrill. So I think all these aspects need to be a rethink and a change of patriarchal attitudes.
Okay. I have a question for Rekha Agarwal, but before that, my colleague Meenakshi has been patiently waiting because, Meenakshi, my apologies, we had that technical issue. You were making a very important point, and our guests on the show also picked up on that there are no toilets for women. And this is, imagine, this is 2022 and we are still talking about toilets and how women are facing these issues. And you were also talking about your experience at Patiala House Court. Please go ahead.
Well, that's right, Archana. Geeta Luthra, ma'am, and I have interacted substantially over a period of years, and she was very interestingly highlighting as to how things have improved, but there is a greater scope for more improvement in times to come. And with regards to the Patiala House instance, it was something which was covered widely in the newspapers the following day. But the fact of the matter is that we lady journalists, while we were being, surrounded or gheraued by the goons inside the court premises, there was not a single lady constable or single lady magistrate or, any judicial officer that could intervene that point in time and really, redeem the situation for us. So that was something which was hugely scary. It was extensively covered as well, Archana, back then. It was a bail hearing which caused all the ruckus. A group of lawyers got together and created a hooligan-like situation inside the court premises. So that was one instance that really stands out, because that was the national capital of Delhi that we are talking about. It was the Patiala House, which is a very centrally located court in India, in Delhi, that we are referring to. And like Geeta Luthra ji and Rekha Agarwal ji, they were highlighting the deep-set patriarchy. You remember the Chief Justice of India underlined the ingrained, deep-set patriarchy, which means something that has been going on for years. It has been carrying on for generations, which really needs an overhaul, entire mindset overhaul. And very quickly, very importantly, I would like to add here as to how the Chief Justice of India, he was explaining his bona fides as to how this is a cause which is very dear to his heart.
Yes.
And very quickly for our viewers, it is under his tenure, Honorable Justice Ramana's tenure, that Lady Chief Justice of India is en route. Like Justice Nagaratna is all set to become the first Chief Justice of India, shortly in some years' time. But that has happened under the tenure of Justice Ramana, who got Justice Nagaratna to the Supreme Court. And for the first time, we are seeing the Supreme Court have 4 lady justices, and that really sends out the strong message and signal to society at large, other
Yes.
high courts at large, as to how it is time for women's greater participation.
Absolutely. And I have one last question to Rekha Agarwal. Another important aspect that the CJI underlined was that we are definitely in need of more women judges from rural background. The atrocities faced by rural women or women from marginalized communities are often underreported. What has your experience been like, and especially it's not just about representation of women from rural backgrounds, but also women from rural backgrounds who approach courts for justice. That experience has also been very horrific. We have reported about that in the past as well.
Archana, I fully agree with what the Honorable CJI has said, because here we are sitting very comfortably in our ivory towers in Delhi. As Meenakshi also said that when she was talking about her experience in Patiala House Courts, here we are having things very, very comfortably, and very securely. We are sitting in the national capital of the country, as well as the things are much better in the other metro cities also. But you just cross the border of Delhi, maybe if you even reach a place like, say, Ghaziabad or Faridabad or, or the NCR region. I mean, recently I had the experience of going to, a court, Surajpur court, the Greater Noida court. And further down, we have courts like, say, in Khurja, Bulandshahr, which are hardly, say, about an hour or 2 hours away from Delhi. But it is a horrific experience where you feel that the taboo, the patriarchal system that we are talking about, which is so ingrained in our minds, that is rampant, and that is very, very obvious even to the naked eye. You don't have to be very, very smart to understand that what is happening. So whatever atrocities that women face, the rural women face, that is supposed to be their kismat. That is, you're born a woman, so that is part of your fate. Kismat has written that, you are a woman, so you're supposed to be treated as a second-grade citizen. That mindset has still not changed. Women are still supposed to suffer their fate,
Right.
whether it is physical hardship or whether it is, any verbal abuse. Even in their own parents' house, violence doesn't happen only after you get married. We must change that concept also. In fact, thankfully, we have the Domestic Violence Act 2005, which has taken note of the fact that sometimes women face violence even before marriage in their own homes, at the hands of their parents, at the hands of their brothers or relatives. So violence, which is very, very subtle at times. Sometimes it need not always be physical violence, but all sorts of violence which happen: economic violence, emotional abuse, physical torture, mental abuse, depriving you financially of your earnings, defaming
Yes.
a woman's character. All those kind of things which women are subjected to over the years, that is all the more rampant in the rural sector of our country. And women do not have the courage to make those complaints, and nobody ever even listens to their complaint.
Right.
That thing has to change.
All right, thank you so much, Rekha Agarwal and Geeta Luthra, for weighing in on this very important conversation. It is important, as I said, to have this conversation again and again and again. Repeat the same thing unless the change comes. It's lovely to have you on the broadcast. Thank you for making time. And we'll slip into a short break. On the other side, Telangana's governor has apparently lectured women on what to wear. And we will get you a detailed discussion with Women Voices on the other side. Stay tuned.